They say when a man is about to lose everything, the ancestors whisper first. They don't shout. They don't warn you plainly. They drop small stones in your path and wait to see if you're wise enough to notice. I didn't notice at first. I was sitting alone in my pickup truck in the courthouse parking lot when my wife's words finally caught up to me. I built your life. I deserve half of everything. Those words were still ringing in my ears as my hands tightened around the steering wheel like it was the only solid thing left in my world. 22 years of marriage. That's not just time. That's seasons. That's births and burials. That's lean years and fat harvests. That's watching each other grow lines on the face and gray in the beard. And in one afternoon, my wife told a judge she was entitled to $8.5 million of my assets, half my company, and the ranch my grandfather homesteaded when the land still answered only to God and hard work. My name is Daniel Kofi Mensah. I am 51 years old. And I had just watched the woman I trusted more than any living soul smile while trying to erase my bloodline. But this story didn't begin in a courtroom. It began the way many African stories do. With a young man who believed love was enough. And a woman who once believed the same. So let me take you back. Because betrayal never arrives loudly. It removes its shoes before entering your house. In my village back home, elders say, you don't know the strength of a rope until it begins to fray. When I met my wife, Amma, there was no fraying. We were both young. Both hungry. Both dreaming beyond where we stood. I met her at university, me studying civil engineering, working construction during holidays, my hands always rough, always carrying the smell of cement and sun-baked dust. Her studying communications, words flowing from her mouth like music. She could make even the dullest subject sound important. Back then, she used to laugh when I came to see her with cracked hands and dirt under my nails. Those are honest hands, she'd say, holding them like they were treasure. They tell the truth. That mattered to me. Where I come from, a man is judged by what his hands can build and what his back can carry. I wasn't born rich. I wasn't born connected. I was born into a lineage of builders, men who believed land remembers who respects it. My grandfather claimed our ranch decades ago, when the soil was stubborn and the nights were cold. He built a cabin with his own hands, planted trees he never lived to sit under, and told my father, this land is not wealth. It is responsibility. That lesson stayed with me. After graduation, while others chased corporate jobs in the city, I bought an old pickup truck, some borrowed tools, and registered a small construction outfit. Just my name. Just my word. Amma stood beside me through all of it. She watched me lose bids. She watched equipment break down. She watched me come home silent some nights, calculating numbers in my head like prayer beads. And when things finally turned, when contracts started coming in and my name began to mean something in the region, she was there too. People like to say, she helped you build it. But here is a truth people don't like hearing. Standing beside a builder does not mean you laid the bricks. I laid them. Day after day. Failure after failure. Problem after problem. Construction teaches you something early. Every morning brings a problem, and by evening, that problem must be solved, or you don't eat. That mindset shaped me. By the time my company crossed the $10 million mark annually, we had dozens of employees, multiple long-term contracts, and equipment worth more than most people's houses. And still, Amma never asked questions. She didn't care about depreciation schedules. She didn't ask about balance sheets. She didn't want to hear about bonding capacity or equipment valuation. She used to wave me off. "Don't bring work home," she'd say. "You'll bore me to death." That's why, when the questions started, they landed like a drumbeat out of rhythm. The first time was on a Tuesday morning. I remember because Tuesdays are problem days. We had hit unexpected rock on a commercial site, a layer of stubborn stone that would delay us weeks if handled the wrong way. My crew looked to me, waiting. That's leadership. People waiting for your decision. I told them to bring in heavier equipment, absorb the cost, save the time. While I was standing there, dust on my boots, phone buzzing in my pocket, Amma called. "Daniel," she said lightly, "how much are those machines worth again?" I paused. "Which ones?" "All of them." She'd never asked that before. I told her. She hummed thoughtfully. "And they're all in your name?" Something tightened in my chest. Why now? That night, I came home and found her cooking with a notepad beside her. A notepad. After 22 years of marriage. "What's that for?" I asked. "Oh," she said quickly, "I'm just trying to understand your world better." But her eyes weren't curious. They were measuring. In my culture, elders say, when a goat starts counting yams, someone has taught it mathematics. I didn't yet know who was teaching her. But I knew something had shifted. Over the next weeks, the questions multiplied. How many projects are active? What's the ranch worth now? If something happened to you, what would I inherit? Each question polite. Each one sharper than the last. I told myself not to overthink it. After all, she was my wife. The woman who cried when my father died. The woman who stood beside me at the graveside while the soil fell. I didn't want to believe a heart could hold comfort in one hand and calculation in the other. Then came the afternoon that changed everything. I returned home early, needing documents for a meeting. I walked into my home office and found Amma at my filing cabinet, phone raised, quietly photographing contracts. She froze. I froze. "What are you doing?" I asked. She smiled too fast. "Organizing." That's when I knew. Because when someone lies, the ancestors pull the veil from your eyes, but only once. That night, lying beside her, listening to her breathe, I realized something painful. The woman who once admired my calloused hands was now counting what those hands could be turned into. And that realization planted the seed that would eventually destroy everything she thought she was about to win. Because the next morning, I would discover that my wife was not the only one measuring my life in numbers. In my father's house, there was a saying the old men repeated when someone started acting strange. When the drumbeat changes, the dancer must change his steps. I had been dancing to the same rhythm for 22 years. Marriage, work, home, legacy. But now the beat was off. And I was still moving like nothing had changed. After I caught Amma photographing my contracts, something inside me hardened, not into anger, but into awareness. Anger burns fast and blind. Awareness is slow, cold, patient. I didn't confront her again. That was my first smart move. Instead, I watched. I watched the way she took phone calls in the other room, lowering her voice when I walked past. I watched the way she suddenly had lunch meetings 3 or 4 times a week with people whose names didn't stick. I watched how she stopped asking if I was tired and started asking how much longer I planned to work. Those are not the questions of a concerned wife. Those are the questions of someone calculating an exit. On Friday nights, I played cards with the same men I'd trusted for years. Builders, bankers, suppliers, men who knew how money moved and how people changed when it did. That night, as the cards hit the table and the jokes settled into silence, I mentioned it casually. Emma's been asking a lot about the company lately, I said. Numbers. Assets. The room shifted. Not dramatically. Just enough. Kwame, my site foreman, older than me, scarred hands, eyes that had seen too many betrayals, didn't look up from his cards. When a woman who never cared about the granary starts counting bags of maize, he said quietly, someone has already told her there is famine coming. The banker across the table sighed. Daniel, he said carefully, you ever hear the phrase asset freeze? I nodded. Then you know timing matters. That night, I drove home slower than usual. The house was dark. Emma said she'd gone to bed early. I lay next to her, staring at the ceiling, listening to a woman who once loved me breathe like a stranger. The next week, I began moving quietly. I didn't accuse. I didn't threaten. I didn't change my routine. I called a lawyer. Not the loud kind. The careful kind. A man who understood business, land, and silence. He listened as I spoke, never interrupting, letting me finish every sentence like each word mattered. When I told him about the questions, the photos, the sudden interest, he leaned back and folded his hands. How long have you been married? He asked. 22 years. And how long have these questions been happening? 8 months. Maybe longer. He nodded slowly. She's late, he said. Late for what? For mercy. That sentence sat heavy. He explained what Emma could do. How fast papers could be filed. How accounts could be frozen. How businesses died not from bad management, but from legal paralysis. You built everything directly? He asked. I nodded. He exhaled. Then right now, you're standing in the open field during a storm. We began working immediately. Quietly. Legally. I transferred nothing hastily. Every move was deliberate. Documented. Clean. Structures within structures, like a calabash hidden inside another calabash. While this was happening, something else began to bother me. My business partner. Kojo. 14 years together. He wasn't just a partner. He was family. He had eaten at my table. My children called him uncle. He stood beside me when my father was buried. And lately, he was asking questions. How's cash flow looking next quarter? Which clients are locked in long term? Who controls the bonding? On their own, reasonable. Together? A map. I noticed he stayed late more often. Not working, waiting. One evening, I forgot blueprints at the office and returned after dark. His car was still there. The lights were off except for his office. I didn't plan to listen. But when I heard my name through the door, my feet stopped moving. He doesn't suspect anything, Kojo was saying softly into his phone. He trusts too easily. Always has. My blood went cold. I stayed still. The real value isn't the machines, he continued. It's the contracts. The relationships. Once we have those, starting over will be easy. A pause. Then laughter. I stepped back slowly, quietly, like a man leaving a shrine after hearing something forbidden. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the edge of my bed, watching Emma sleep, realizing the truth was bigger and darker than I'd imagined. My wife wasn't acting alone. And the man I trusted with my business knew exactly how to dismantle it. In the morning, I called my lawyer again. "How fast can we finish?" I asked. There was a pause. "Fast enough," he said. "If you're ready to stop pretending this is just a marriage problem." That's when I understood. This wasn't about love anymore. It was about survival. And in every folktale I'd ever heard, the man who survived was never the loudest. He was the one who listened, waited, and struck only when the trap was fully set. Because within 3 weeks, I would learn exactly how long my wife and my partner had been planning my destruction, and how close I was to losing everything. In my village, there was a proverb my grandfather used to repeat whenever the animals in the bush acted strangely. The leopard does not reveal its spots until it strikes. I understood now that my wife and my partner were leopards. But I had learned one truth the hard way: a man who builds with his hands, who understands stone and soil, can also learn patience. And patience in war, legal or otherwise, is often more powerful than fury. 3 weeks had passed since I began quietly restructuring my business and safeguarding the ranch. I hadn't spoken to Amma or Kojo about my suspicions. If either of them sensed my knowledge, the game would be lost. I had to know precisely how deep the betrayal went before making a move. I hired Patricia Russo, a former police detective turned private investigator. She had a reputation in the community that bordered on mythical. If she said she could find the truth, she would, and quietly enough that no whisper of it would reach the ears of those plotting against me. When we met in her office, a small room in a nondescript building between a bakery and a tailor, she looked at me with eyes sharper than a falcon's. "Mr. Coleman," she said, folding her hands over the desk, "what you're describing is not just a divorce. It's a conspiracy." I leaned back, feeling the weight of every hour I had spent building my life pressing down on me. "I know," I said. "I need to know exactly what I'm dealing with." Patricia nodded. "Then we start by following the drumbeat. People like your wife and your partner don't make mistakes, they leave trails. Emails, calls, lunch meetings. Everything. You just need someone who can read it." I handed her a list of dates, times, and events that had felt suspicious over the past 8 months. The photo of Amma with the contracts. The late nights Kojo had spent at the office. The sudden lunch meetings Amma had with friends whose names I didn't know. Patricia smiled faintly. "This is a good start. Give me 3 weeks, and you'll see everything." I left her office feeling a mix of dread and resolve. Every step I had taken, every precaution I had set up with my lawyer, was about to be tested. At first, I continued my normal routine at Coleman Construction, walking through sites, checking schedules, and ensuring employees were paid on time. But now, my eyes had learned a new skill. I watched people differently. Every conversation was measured. Every laugh, every pause, every smile, examined. Amma began taking more lunch breaks and phone calls. Each time she left the house, I made a mental note: where she went, how long she stayed, who she met, what she said if I overheard it. Kojo continued his subtle questioning about client contracts, equipment valuations, and bonding capacities. But now I listened carefully, noting what he didn't say, the silent pauses, the half-hidden smirks, the small changes in his voice. It was during one of these late nights at the office that I realized just how deep the conspiracy went. I had forgotten a set of blueprints and returned after dark. Kojo's truck was still in the lot. I used my key to enter quietly, and through the door to his office, I heard him speaking with Emma. "Yes," he said, "everything's ready. The client lists, the equipment values, the long-term contracts, they don't suspect a thing. By the time they realize, it will be too late." My hands went cold. My knees nearly buckled. This was no longer about curiosity. This was about survival. The betrayal I had feared was real, and it had been planned with precision. Patricia worked tirelessly over the next week, following Emma and Kojo without being seen. She documented every meeting, every phone call, every transaction that hinted at a plan to dismantle my business. Then came the moment that broke my heart and steeled my resolve. Patricia handed me a folder, thick with photographs, receipts, and notes. Emma and Kojo had been having an affair for 10 months. Hotel receipts, restaurant bills, photographs of them together in places where they thought no one would see them, every piece a puzzle forming a picture of betrayal. I stared at the photographs, my hands shaking, a mix of rage and disbelief threatening to spill out. The woman I had trusted for over 20 years, and the man I had considered family, were working together to destroy everything I had built. Patricia explained the full extent of the scheme. Emma had consulted 3 different attorneys, 2 private investigators, and a forensic accountant. She had been building a case against me long before my father passed away. Every move she made, every question about the business, had been calculated. Kojo had been feeding her information the entire time. The betrayal was a double-edged sword, personal and financial. I realized now that every careful precaution I had taken, the LLC, the trust, the restructuring, was not just wise, it was essential. Without it, everything would have been lost. I spent the next several days planning. I did not confront Emma or Kojo. I did not alter my behavior in any way. Instead, I focused on 2 things: documenting everything and preparing the legal trap. With my lawyer, Greg, we finalized the structure that would protect the company's assets. Coleman Holdings LLC held the real value, the land, the equipment, the contracts, while Coleman Construction became an operating company with minimal assets. The ranch, my family's legacy, was placed in a family trust with strict inheritance rules. I also prepared a revised settlement offer for the divorce. Emma thought she would walk away with millions, half the company, and the ranch. What she didn't know was that most of the valuable assets were legally inaccessible to her. Every move was like setting a calabash trap, apparent simplicity on the outside, deadly precision inside. The day of the hearing arrived. Emma walked into the courtroom, confident, dressed in black, the picture of victory. Her lawyer, Walsh, had flown in from the city, ready to secure the fortune she believed was hers. Kojo sat quietly in the gallery, a smug smile on his face, thinking his plan was about to succeed. I sat with Greg, calm, collected, knowing that every piece of the puzzle was in place. Patricia had delivered her report to us, documenting every meeting, every call, every detail of the conspiracy. When the judge asked if I contested the claims, I surprised everyone. "No, Your Honor," I said. "I agree to all of them." Emma's face lit up with triumph. Walsh smiled as if he had won the lottery. Kojo leaned back, confident. I waited. When the judge signed the decree, I reached into my briefcase and pulled out a manila folder. I handed it to the bailiff, who passed it to the judge. Inside were the corporate structure documents for Coleman Holdings, the trust documents for the ranch, and Patricia's investigative report detailing Amma and Kojo's conspiracy. The courtroom went silent. Walsh's confident demeanor evaporated. Amma's smile faded. The judge read through the documents carefully. Finally, he looked at Amma. "Mrs. Amma Coleman," he said, "it appears the assets you believed were awarded may not be accessible in the manner you anticipated." I stood, calm, measured. "I am prepared to honor the spirit of the settlement," I said. 800,000 cash. The rest remains in legal structures inaccessible to anyone other than myself and my family trust. Take it, or spend the next 5 years in court attempting the impossible." Amma's face went pale. Walsh requested a recess. When the court reconvened, she had no choice but to accept the revised settlement. Kojo was bought out 3 days later. His partnership share, $4,000 to $5,000 at book value, was meaningless compared to the relationships and contracts he thought he could take. He left the state, never to work in the local construction business again. Amma tried to contest the trust documents, but after 6 months and $60,000 in legal fees, her new lawyer advised her to give up. She took the cash and moved away, her plans dissolved like dust in the wind. Coleman Construction thrived. The ranch remained in the family. The employees relaxed. Clients returned. I never remarried. Trust, once broken in such a deliberate way, changes a man. But I had learned a critical lesson. The best revenge is not to destroy those who betray you. It is to remain standing when they believe they have destroyed you. The land, the company, the family legacy, they remained intact because I understood one fundamental truth. The leopard may lay in wait, but the man who knows the drumbeat can set his own trap. And when the dust settled, I knew that everything I had built, every choice I had made, every step I had taken, had preserved not just my life, but my family's legacy.